This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to my ranking of all the Arkham and Marvel's Spider-Man games. There will be one exception, which is Arkham VR. I have not had the chance to play this because I do not own a VR headset, and I don't think there's enough games to really justify buying a VR headset that I would want to get. So I will have to put that as an honorable mention at last because I have never played Arkham VR and probably never will. I haven't even seen the gameplay footage of it. I'll probably eventually check it out, but that's just the one game that I have never played, so I cannot justly rank it here. But besides that, I'll take a look at the 8 games that were released between these two series. I'll also be considering really any DLC connected to them. Also, side content and gameplay, but this is generally going to be over my enjoyment of the story, and the game overall will be sort of second, but it'll be main things of my enjoyment of the story and more or less of its length, because there's a few of them that I feel are just a little too short. But let's go and start off with the 8th in this list. After I tell you that, remember, this is my opinion. I know this is not going to be a popular opinion because you'll see when I get to, I believe it's number 6, because that's not going to be popular. But let's go straight into it now, starting with number 8. And at number 8, I put Arkham Origins Blackgate. And this is the most unique of these 8 games because it's the most different. It's instead of being a full 3D game, it's more of a 2.5D, I believe it's defined as, where there is some depth, but you don't have the full interactiveness as everything else. But the other thing is, it's just 3 mainly different side stories going on that's loosely tied together with Amanda Waller trying to have Catwoman break Bane out of Blackgate. And the gameplay in this one is obviously the worst out of all of them, but not taking that as a huge factor. It's more the fact that this one is kind of the most forgotten of all these. And honestly, I really haven't had the biggest desire to replay this one since I first played it, I believe, 2 years ago. I eventually will, and probably will do it soon because I'm currently replaying the Arkham games. So I'll probably do this soon, but honestly, just the last few times I was like, I didn't really feel like loading this game up and kind of just didn't play it. It's still a solid game, but it's honestly just kind of different and was designed for not the consoles but the mobile versions. So this is more like a mobile version, so it is impressive for that. I believe it's for the Nintendo DS and like the PS Vita. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure those were the ones it was for. But it's, not the best, and the only reason I ever got to play it is because it's also on Steam. So that's really why I have this at last, but I think it's still solid, but everything else is just way better than it. Going to number 7, and this one is the Miles Morales spin-off game. And the only reason that I think this is here is because it just doesn't have the bigger scale that the others do. This is a smaller one, although its campaign is not the shortest one on here. I believe that is the next one. And even Origins Blackgate had a decently long story. But this one, the main thing about it is that I'm not as big of a fan of Miles, and Bruce and Peter are far more interesting protagonists to me. But still, this is a really enjoyable game. There's not too many problems with it, and really nothing I can think off the top of my head besides that it's just, a little shorter. But it is made up for with being a little cheaper, and that's really the main thing. It's not really a terrible game. It's actually a really solid game. It's just, I think that it is kind of done better by the other ones, with a few exceptions for side content, because this one has some pretty solid side content and is currently the only Spider Man game that I finished all the side content for. And mainly that's because I am just trying to do that for Spider Man 2. I just haven't had the time. And for the first Spider Man game, you'll see my opinions on the side content when I get there, but it's a pretty big fallback for that. But side content isn't really a huge deal to me and doesn't go into it too much, but it is still something that's at least relevant to this. But now let's go on to number 6. And before I do, remember, this is my opinion. You can have a different opinion. You're probably not going to agree with this opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway because this is honestly where it goes in my personal opinion. Please let me know why you think I'm wrong in the comments, but you're not really going to change my mind. Well, I do want to know why, you think this is would be probably number 1, because at number 6 I have Arkham City. So yeah, I bet you were thinking that there's no way this is bad as you said, and then you're probably like, wow, I could never be so wrong. And don't get me wrong, I love Arkham City, and I think maybe one thing about it is I don't have as much of a nostalgic tie to it. I think a lot of it might be nostalgia for putting it at number 1, because this is a really solid game, and I would definitely recommend to play it. It's a great game, don't get me wrong. The main problem I have with it is I just feel like the story is way too short. I feel like I could easily get through this, especially if I put on easier difficulties, in 4 or 5 hours. And, that would also be if you skip the cutscenes. Again, maybe another hour or two if you include them. But honestly, it just feels like Arkham City, that's my main problem. It has the really short campaign. Although the story is solid, it feels like you're also doing just a lot of side quests in it. You're not really, following a centralized plot. You're more like doing it and then having to get sidetracked to do something else to help you with it, and then another sidetrack happens from that. And although the story is great and it has some incredible bosses, and also the incredible move to actually kill off the Joker, I think that it's just personally here for me because I think it's probably just me not having a nostalgic connection to it as much, because honestly, I sort of got it with Asylum, and you'll see my thoughts on that later in the list. But I don't know, I just never had the as deep connection with everyone does with Arkham City, and I think it's like a little overrated. Not super, but it's still a solid story, but it's just honestly my least favorite of the core Arkham series. That of course doesn't include Blackgate because, that's a little more often. I kind of explained that when I talked about Blackgate earlier. Now, I believe that number 5 and 4, at least in my opinion, are really close. They really could go either way if I wanted to. But for this one, and I think the two of these are the ones that really do have subject to change. But number 5 for this one, I put Arkham Origins. And that is through the fact that this game is really incredible with its story and is the one that really focuses on Bruce as a person the most, and him with kind of character development and him being really early into his career. I think that's some great characterization, and the other thing is I don't have, as much of a hatred of this game since I wasn't really hyped up for it and didn't really know about all the marketing stuff until after where they're saying that Black Mask was the villain, and I never minded the Joker twist as much. Yeah, I thought it would have been cool to see Black Mask as the main villain, but it was never as bad as I think some people made it sound. And I really enjoyed Joker in this. Joker was very solid in it, and his first interaction with Batman was just really cool to see him kind of sickly fall in love with the idea of Batman and sort of wanting to be his enemy was interesting. And everything with Bruce just going through this and kind of realizing so much of the Batman from last year, how to be a better hero, was really cool. And then Bane was incredible in this. They did Bane correctly, and for all these other games that had Bane in it, Bane was just a kind of dumb brute, and I always hated that interpretation of Bane, but in here, he's smart, he's cunning, he's able to find out Batman's identity, and they do explain how he becomes, just the way more dumb version of himself later in the series with him having his mind messed up by the TN1, which would eventually become Titan. But yeah, honestly, that was really interesting. The other thing I love is some of the boss fights in this. Deathstroke is incredible. So is Bane. Even side quests like Deadshot. And it's a really solid game overall. One of the few problems I have with it is I feel like some of the gameplay isn't as smooth since this is done by Rocksteady. And I feel like I have a lot more problems playing this one, and the main reason I am hesitant to try out I Am the Knight on this when I eventually get to that point is because there is just a lot of times where I have problems with the game operating, and sometimes I try to do a takedown or some kind of move and it doesn't register. And I've played this both on Steam and my Xbox 360, so I know it's a problem with the game itself and not just the controllers I am using, since it's a persistent problem across different systems. But really, that's just a minor thing, and I think that everything else about it is really solid, and I personally believe it belongs here, although it could switch around with the next spot, which is Marvel's Spider-Man. And this is at the number 4 spot because this is honestly just such a solid game. It is a great introduction to this universe, even though we are extremely far into Peter's career as Spider-Man. It is still just a really cool thing to see an experienced Spider-Man taking on generally established villains, but also see some of his classic villains be created for the first time, so there is some intrigue and a different threat for that Peter, although, of course, we all know of Doc Ock and their choice for the beginning antagonist to be Mr. Negative, a character that honestly I would say most fans never heard of before this game. Was honestly really interesting and it was really cool. I think that this has some great emotional moments, especially towards the end where not only is Peter fighting Doc Ock and after Otto reveals that he knows who Peter is, you just see Peter kind of have an emotional breakdown beating Otto up and talking about how much he looked up to him and respected him. That was a really well done part of the game. And of course, Aunt May's death was handled amazingly, and even though it was done really well in the MCU, it was handled far better here, and I love how she just allowed herself to die so that others could live, and how much she was dedicated to everyone. That was honestly just such a nice moment, and throughout it, there's just so many incredible moments. There are a few flaws, mainly with the stealth sections for both Miles and MJ, which, I'm going to be honest, gets really annoying. And there's parts where, I don't want to be doing that. So glad they fixed it in the sequel, which I'll be talking about very soon. But this game, honestly, it's really solid. Not really any problems with it, besides those few things. And, of course, the side content, which, besides a few side missions, honestly, I just never had the desire to fully complete it. I wanted to, beat a few things like Taskmaster and stuff, but besides that, I've just never been giving the full motivation to go and try and 100% this game. I've 100%ed Miles and every Arkham game besides Blackgate. But of all of them, this is just the one that I haven't had the desire to 100%. And the other thing is with City is, what's the fact to mention, is there's way too many Riddler trophies in that one. And I have beat it once, but I'm going to be doing it at least one more time for this channel. But just going at it, this one is one that I will eventually beat for this channel just to show the 100% completion of it. But I really have no desire to do it anytime soon, and that is a small factor. As I said again, side quest content and stuff isn't going to be as big. Although this is one where I realized I didn't talk about the DLC for really any of them. But the only ones I think really are worth mentioning is Cold Cold Heart, which was a nice add-on to the previous game of Origins. But this one honestly has the best and most well drawn out DLC since it is 3 parts and each do last at least a few hours. So you get a good amount of additional content telling an additional story, and it's like getting an extra mini game thrown onto the end. I really like that add-on, and I think it's pretty solid. But this one just doesn't rank as high as the ones that make it into the top 3 for me. Starting off at number 3 in the top 3, I have Marvel Spider-Man 2. If you have not finished the game yet, I am going to hopefully remember to put a timestamp into when the next spot is, and you could skip ahead to that point. But this game was honestly just really great. It improves over basically everything from the previous two games, including even more fun features like the web wings and just way better web swinging. The game looks incredible, and that's all, some of the more minor stuff. But to go into it, this story was truly incredible. It was awesome to see both Peter and Miles in this. And even though I did say that I'm not as big of a fan of Miles, I think that this is definitely Miles at his best in this series. It was interesting to see him with Peter and taking on the role of Spider Man alongside Peter, and eventually Peter wanting to at least temporarily retire and give Miles the chance to be the sole Spider Man, but also get a chance to actually, live his life, which is something he really needs because Peter Parker is getting really bad stuff that happens to him all the time. I do think that stuff with Venom could have been done maybe, just a little bit better and have the final fight be a little more personal. And I think that the order of boss fight should have been swapped around with the Miles section happening first and then the Peter section happening second, since Peter has a more emotional connection to Harry, who doesn't do as much once he's taken over by Venom. It's just more Venom being the full-on villain, using Harry's body as the means to attack. But still, that's honestly more of a minor complaint, and I'm fully willing to look past it because this, as I said, it was just truly incredible. I loved playing this game through fully. You had some great stuff like the twist where MJ turned out to be infected by this Scream symbiote and you had to fight her. That was a completely unexpected boss fight and was incredible. And there was also the incredible fight between Miles and Peter. But yeah, honestly, this game is just super great. The stuff with the symbiote suit was truly incredible. And honestly, it felt more like when you had that suit on, you were playing as Batman than Spider Man because you're just going off on them and having way less restraint. And just, the thing I kept thinking about when I was playing this section of the game was the Scarecrow quote from Arkham Knight when Batman is at least partially giving into the Joker infection where he's like, such brutality. I just kept thinking that when I was playing as a symbiote suit because it just felt like you were just fighting with more aggression and power, and I loved that. Everything with it was just really great. Yeah, there are, a few complaints you could have, but overall, this is just a solid game and definitely the best, at least in my opinion, of the series, but who knows? That could be recency bias. I don't really feel like it is for me because I just really love this game and it was truly incredible to me. But as you can see, the Arkham games take the top two spots. You know it's going to be Asylum and Night. So let's go take a look at which one is which. And at number two, I have Arkham Knight. And the one thing I have to say about this before I go into, story and everything is I have no idea how a game that is coming up on its 10-year anniversary in just over a year looks better than most of the games that are coming out today because honestly, if you told me that this game was a PS5 exclusive or next gen exclusive, I would have definitely would have been able to believe you, especially over something like Gotham Knights, which looks more like it would have belonged on PS4 or Xbox One because honestly, I just can't believe how incredible this game looks. And it has a really great story overall. Yes, there is, the thing of the Batmobile, which I don't say I don't mind it as much as some other people. Yeah, it does get, annoying sometimes using it too much. And there are some boss fights that are a really big pain in the butt to deal with in it. Like the entire thing where you have to fight the Cloudburst tank. It's just, it's more annoying to do, and something I never really loved doing it. And there are a few other those annoying points, and of course there is some really bad side content, like Deathstroke is pretty bad in this, and it honestly probably would be better if they didn't include him. There's also some great side content, but the story is really compelling. It is just really incredible for me, and I think that there are a few things that could have been improved. I think that Scarecrow being just a little bit more of a threat and having him as some kind of boss fight, even if it was like the PlayStation DLC was, where you have to fight him in kind of a fear toxin induced world, would have been pretty cool. And I just wish they did something to fight him and for you to take him down after you conquered the Joker hallucinations, because that's one of the problems I had with it, and the reason it's not at number one, because I do really enjoy it overall. I don't mind the Arkham Knight twist too much. That's just like with Origins. I didn't play it until after it came out, so I wasn't hearing all the stuff about how they were saying, oh, Jason Todd isn't the Arkham Knight, and I actually watched it on YouTube first because at the time I didn't have a next gen console, so I couldn't play it. I did think I got my PS4 about a year after the game released. I remember exactly. It was around the time the first Battlefront came out. I remember I think I watched the thing for Arkham Knight over that summer. So yeah, I got that because the reason I remember that's because I have the Darth Vader console from the first Battlefront game. So that's the only reason I remember when I first got it. So I think that was like 2015 or 2016 when that game came out. So I can't remember exactly how long it was, but so it was at least 6 months to at least a year, but never really knew that. But I still enjoyed the story overall. I don't mind the Batmobile too much, besides a few sections. I think if you had a Scarecrow boss fight at the end, or at least, maybe before the Joker Station stuff, I think that this could have pushed it to number one. And side content was a little better, that would have helped also, but still, I think number two is where I'd put it. Now going to number one, it is clearly Batman Arkham Asylum. And the only thing that is really a problem with this is it has no side content, but that's because it is the game that started this modern superhero gaming and kind of blew up and was just really great. It did have the Riddler stuff, and that's definitely the easiest of all of them. Origins being the second easiest, since you could also get maps and know where all the locations are instead of having to do all well, that one you have the location of the interrogations, but this one you can just pick up maps and is one of the easiest to beat the Riddler content for it. This one has honestly always been my favorite of the Arkham games, and the one thing that was frustrating about it was when I was younger and first got it for the Xbox 360 and played the game in the Year Edition, I had no idea how to do the detective mode scanning where you had to follow the whiskey that Frank Bulls had. So I literally had no idea how to do it, and when I was younger, I didn't really think too much about, using the internet to figure it out. So that game was just left unbeat for me for like a year or two until I decided to go back and tried it out and was eventually able to figure it out and beat the game. But yeah, that was just, funny story with the game for me. But I love playing this game. It has, honestly, the best story of all of them, in my opinion. I just really love playing it, and the atmosphere is great. Even though this is the smallest in terms of everything besides really story, which is obviously City is a lot shorter than this one. But I think this is like the second shortest story, with the other ones taking a lot longer to beat. This is still just a really great one and got me into the Arkham series, and it will always be my personal favorite. No, I don't know if something like Spider-Man 3 could push itself over because honestly, it's not really much to, too much to be crazy, especially with that game looking really crazy. But honestly, Asylum would probably always be number one. But who knows? Things could change. But honestly, I want to know what you think. Please let me know how you would rate these games. And I will see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.